Hello, everyone. My name is Hoang. I'm BIM manager at. I'm BIM manager at Heatherwick Studio. Welcome to my talk on connecting BIM and design, a new digital design workflow. My role is to manage the implementation of BIM and strategy across all of our projects that are using BIM to ensure consistency and quality of output. Sorry, there's something wrong with my slides here. And I manage a team of BIM coordinators to ensure quality of output across all of our projects. These are our studio members celebrating the start of construction on our coal drops yard project in King's Cross. We have a very diverse portfolio of projects, from bridges to transport, and from perfume bottles to airports. And we believe that quality of design should never be hindered by software or skills. The tools that we use, whether they are digital or analog, should never dictate how our ideas evolve. They should assist and boost our design process. And we recognize that every software has its own limitations and strengths. So Revit is good for documentation, live update of changes, and synchronizing between sheets. And Rhino has an amazing range of modeling tools, modeling abstract elements, and complex geometrical languages. So part of this presentation is to show how we bring these two worlds together. So we believe there are kind of three elements to this. Strategy, what are you going to do with the project? Make sure that you define and have that strategy clearly mapped out. Management, how are you going to implement that strategy? And digital, applying the right tools to achieve your strategy. So how can we apply this to a project? So I'm going to introduce to you this project that we currently have in construction in West London, which is the Olympia Conference Centre, which is located near Kensington and Hyde Park. The building hosts various events throughout the year. The original building was built in 1886, and it was originally comprised of just one single building. But over the time, the building has had various additions and it grew. The National Building was added to provide further conference space along with the Central Building. And then some parking facilities were added, and the building grew. And this is the building in its current form. So we were asked by the client to review the master plan, and we decided to clear away all the clutter from the building, all the MEP from the roof. And this gave us opportunities to make public interventions into the building, and also other opportunities to investigate ways in which to improve the public realm in and around the building. So a lack of circulation around the building meant that the buildings were kind of very fragmented, and we looked at how we could connect all of these major exhibition spaces to increase circulation throughout the site. So we raised up the public realm up through the site, and we now have this clear circulation and access through the master plan. We added F&B and retail and a third arch in the form of a canopy. And other cultural buildings were added to the master plan, including the G-Gate Theatre, which is actually the largest, newest music theatre in London since the National Theatre, and also the Olympic West Live music venue. We added new hotels to the National Building in and around the existing car park. And then there was the addition of new office spaces above the Central Building. So this resulted in activation and reinvigoration of the whole site. And these are just some images to illustrate the main areas of our scope, which were the elevated public realm, access via a new grand staircase and escalator into the F&B, and also a new hotel next to the National Building. And this just illustrates the grand staircase, which kind of rises up into the new F&B retail space, which is currently under construction. And also, this is the raised public realm landscaping between the roofs. So let's talk a little bit about strategy and how we bring these two worlds of Rhino and Revit together. Should we always aim for the highest BIM maturity level possible? I think some of the things that we should consider when applying a BIM strategy is to think about things like region, whether you're working in the UK, US, or Asia, whether you're going to be working with multiple collaborators in BIM, understanding the complexity of the building, whether it's a pavilion or an airport, and also understanding your overall scope, whether it's a visioning study, concept, or full scope project. Also, it's good to understand what you're actually required to submit. So this is a BIM requirements LOD matrix for the building. Most of the time, we're looking at LOD 100 for concept. And it's important to understand what LOD means to the project, and also to you as an organization if you don't actually have an LOD defined by the client. And we think it's important to define your BIM goals, what you're trying to achieve with BIM implementation. For the Olympia project, the main goals were for design, fast iterations and immediate visualizations, documentation to come out of the model for efficiency, clarity, and quality, and in construction, improved coordination, revision control, and risk management. So typically on projects, and on this project, we used Rhino in the concept stage, 100% for kind of delivering the concept. And then as we move into kind of schematic design stages, we're looking at using Revit maybe 80% of the time and 20% for Rhino, and then starting to develop some interoperability workflows to bring the geometry into the project. And then at DD stages, we're looking at Revit being kind of the single source of truth for the project, and having that as the main model of coordination between all of the consultants. So this diagram just illustrates our interoperability strategy between Rhino and Revit. So we have these kind of three different routes. We can take blocks from Rhino, decompose the geometries, and build them back into Revit as direct shape families or native families. We have the second route, which is singular Rhino geometries, which then we can apply into Revit with a Revit category as a direct shape. And then this third methodology, using planar geometry from Rhino, decomposing that in Grasshopper, and then turning that into an actual system family in Revit, either as a floor or roof or curtain panel. So you can almost think of these interoperability levels in terms of the standard BIM levels. So for kind of level 0, we're talking about using, as I explained before, like using Rhino for kind of feasibility and concept. In concept, we look at kind of starting to bring Rhino into the Revit model as direct shape wholesale, because we need to have that fast iterative process between the two different softwares. And then we look at kind of a level 1.5 where we're taking Rhino, we're starting to use more sophisticated methodologies by decomposing that geometry into its constituent parts, lines, curves, and then reconstructing that as native Revit elements. So just as a tip, like it's really good to understand what level of detail to model to at the right stage. So all of this detail that we've got in the model here on the kind of left-hand side is good to have, but do we need it? Maybe we just need to have a solid cut through the geometry for concept stage. And as part of your strategy as well, it's good to have some kind of decision matrix which helps you to define what level of BIM that you want to apply for the project, which also affects how you then implement your interoperability strategy across the project. So this is the decision matrix that we use to define the overall level for the project for interoperability. So how do we apply this strategy on this particular project? We're going to give you some examples. So just to give you an idea of the overall timeline of the project, the main elements of the building in which we had scope to design, the public realm, G-Gate, hotel, the concept kicked off in 2017. And this is really before we had a proper overarching strategy in place. G-Gate was a bit behind with concept starting in 2018. And now we're kind of into full construction into 2023. So it's important to kind of remember your BIM goals. What is the target for kind of your BIM goals? And for this project is being able to document every iteration with minimum input into Revit. So these images just show that how we were able to look at different options of the canopy, for instance, on the project using Rhino inside to develop various iterations, and we were able to test that live inside the kind of documentation of the Revit model. So again, you can see that we're testing different iterations of the Revit model. Some of this might have had to go through kind of planning, trying to stay within the scope of the design. So this just shows a typical model structure for our projects, how we kind of map the Rhino model structure to the Revit model structure. And this also kind of applies to work sets as well. So you want to kind of try and map your Revit work sets to your Rhino work sets so that the interoperability between the layers and the work sets becomes more efficient. And it's also a good idea to have your deliverables in mind in terms of what your final deliverables are in terms of drawing output or model output, schedules. And then you can really start to develop that cartoon set very early on, as we call it, to kind of test any geometries that might produce graphical errors within your drawing set. And the cartoon set is really useful for cementing the design and making the project more real in the minds of the designers as well at a very early stage. So we can continue iterating through the project in our design reviews and test real design in a BIM environment. So on most projects, we would advocate for the creation of the cartoon set around 50%. This would usually be in the form of singular imported direct shape geometry by whichever method that you see fit. But it's also important to remember that with good input, you will get good output. But similarly, with garbage in, you will get garbage out as well. So just some tips and tricks on kind of best practice modeling in Rhino for Revit. Try and avoid meshes, NURBS, kind of much better for bringing into Revit. Also, just be mindful that splines can't be trimmed and are difficult to pick when you're creating walls or system families. And also, less is more as well. So, simplification of the geometry in Rhino really helps with that interoperability into Revit. And also, look at kind of modeling in kind of closed surfaces, polysurface as well in Rhino. And always manifold surfaces are always better than non-manifold when we bring it into Revit. Shrinking trimmed surfaces also helps as well. So let's have a quick look at kind of digital and how our digital strategy has developed over time. So in 2018, we developed actually a magic button to bring direct shape geometry into Revit. And in 2019, we started to investigate Rhino inside as a methodology for bringing geometry. And then in 2020, BIM, I don't know if you know this software by MKS, which brings direct shape geometry into Revit as well. So this was our first interoperability strategy, which was Rhino into Dynamo into Revit. And then for us, Rhino inside was the big game changer, really. And this just kind of demonstrates some of the integration of Rhino into Revit. And again, these three different routes that we have between Rhino into Revit as well. We have these two methods of BIM and Rhino inside that we use across the projects. And this just gives some kind of indications of how we establish that strategy across the project as well. So we'll just kind of, in a kind of summary, just make sure that you've got these kind of three elements in place: strategy, management, and digital, in that order. And then hopefully that you will then have a successful integration of Rhino into Revit. Thank you very much. Are there any questions?